is one of the most significant things you can do. I would recommend all of you take a moment once a week. Write a note to somebody. Write a note to somebody that's done something really well for you. Just let them know. One of the second questions I asked that group is, how many of you have in fact received a written note from a boss or a friend or a significant other? If it's 1,000 or 2,000 people in the room, I tend to get about 200 hands. Some people have. And then the interesting thing, I ask, how many of you still have that note? Every one of them. It is one of the most powerful things that you can do. Email doesn't do it. Voicemail doesn't do it. It takes you writing a note by hand to make a difference. But the whole point is that we can in fact influence our lives and others by letting them know what you really in fact prize about their work, their performance, your relationship. So I would implore all of you to take a moment and set people up for positive results by the way you interact with them. Now the other thing with this, it really is great for them, right? The people that you in fact are letting know how much you in fact prize what they do. Is it good for you? Please shake your heads wildly, yes? Interesting little studies. People that do this on a regular basis against control groups have lower blood pressure rates. Their kind of respiration rates are lower. They tend to show up better. They tend to sleep better. Whole sorts of things show up in a positive realm for you. So I would recommend that you take a moment, stop your world, and ask, who in my life is doing great things? Have I let them know? And if I have I let them know enough? And you'll get a great piece of result from that. The third element of positive kind of influence is tenacious, unbridled, unrepentant optimism. Now, I'm not talking about the ability to walk around the world with rose-colored glasses. You know, Pollyanna? I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about the tough kind of optimism. The optimism that it takes that when you get knocked down, you get back up again and keep trying. None of these buildings, none of these programs, none of this will work unless you, in fact, are willing to keep trying. I want to tell you a quick couple of little stories that illustrate this. This is the Nelson and Walt effect. The Nelson that I'm talking about is Nelson Mandela. Went into prison as a committed revolutionary. Went into prison with hate and anger, appropriately, I would think, buried deep in his heart. Spent 28 years in solitary confinement, was tortured, beaten, starved. And on the day of his release, as he walked out of the prison in South Africa, his words were of conciliation. His words were of keep on trying, but to do it peacefully. And words were that we will in fact prevail over apartheid. And I think Mandela is one of the great examples of optimism carried to a positive result. How many of us care enough about something to give that kind of effort, time, and consideration to. The second person that I acknowledge is Walt Disney. He was my old boss. I spent 6 years working directly for Walt Disney at nothing too glorious. I was his assistant. That meant go for it. He said go, and I went. And I did that for a long time and had a chance to really work with one of the great, great people of the last century. What I learned from him was that creativity drives everything, and you never give up on your creative ideas. No matter what the engineers say, no matter what the bankers say, no matter what the boards of directors say, you keep on persevering. The best example of this many of them I can recall, but this was the one that sticks in my mind. Have many of you been to the Anaheim theme park? Anybody? Did anybody go through the Mr. Lincoln exhibit? So this is an audio animatronic replica of Abraham Lincoln. It's amazing how real he looks, right? And the experience is to give you a summation of all of Lincoln's great speeches. So here we are, the first night that the Lincoln exhibit is going to work. Walt is in the room, the press is in the room, the King of Sweden is in the room. Some of us that had something to do with the project is in the room. The Imagineers that put this all together are there. And it comes time for Mr. Lincoln to do his thing. Lights come down, the curtain opens, and if any of you remember how majestical it looks with Abraham Lincoln there sitting in his chair looking around and kind of batting his eyes and so forth. Well, then Lincoln stands up to give this speech. All's going pretty good. He's kind of looking around. He's doing his thing. He then stands up and he goes wacko. He throws his arms. His head flies back. His toupee falls off. His top coat is now popping buttons. And those of us that are involved in this are now crawling under our chairs. Walt gets up and says, all creative processes have their ups and their downs. This was one of our down moments.